Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. Going to be talking about all of this USC and Northwestern game. We're going to just do a quick little recap on that. And this probably won't be a super long podcast, but we are presented and brought to you by FanDuel. And we are going to talk through USC getting the win 38-17. Appreciate all of you being here, whether you're on Twitter, YouTube, whatever it might be. Had some basketball tonight in the Big Ten as well. Caught a little bit of that. Mostly had my eyes on the Illinois game, which was good, but I had my eyes on this USC Northwestern game as 2 minutes left in the game. Sam Heward is in for USC. It's pretty much over at this point. USC is going to win this game 38-17 over Northwestern. It was a fun game to watch. Northwestern really gave USC a tough game there at the beginning, scoring in the first two drives, matching USC. And then once it got to later on in the first half, Northwestern punt, 2 3-and-outs, and then USC scores at the end of the first half, goes up 21-0 after a fumble, which, boy, that could have been game changer right there. I know Northwestern hasn't scored more than they haven't scored a touchdown here in the second half, but that fumble was a key part of the game where the defensive lineman, I believe it was Story for Northwestern, picks up or picks off Jayden Maiava, and then he starts running back, and then Jayden Maiava with an awesome play, by the way. Loved what I saw from Jayden Maiava there. He hits Story as Story is about to go into the end zone. Story fumbles the ball into the end zone, and the rule that people absolutely hate college football, where the ball goes out of the end zone, and obviously from there it's a touchback, and Northwestern doesn't get the ball. Northwestern's distraught. They had the opportunity to go up 21 to 14 there, and then obviously 3 plays later, in the very next drive, USC, they get the ball. 3 plays later, they go 80 yards, score a touchdown. Just heartbreaking for Northwestern there, but a great response by USC. And Jayden Maiava, I love the toughness and the versatility. He was able to get by one of the Northwestern players to get to Story, so that way he can make the tackle on him. And then when he got to Story, he obviously gave him a big enough hit where Story was trying to reach out the ball, hit him well enough that the ball continued to go into the end zone, go right on out of there, and it's USC's ball. So fantastic play by Jayden Maiava, but that wasn't the only good play he had. He had a lot of good plays on the day. Jayden Maiava, like I said, here in 2 minutes left in the game, which he's out of the game by now, so these will be his stats. He was 24 of 33, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 1 interception that he did have there. But then King Miller, 15 rushing attempts for 127 yards and 1 touchdown. USC, they're just really, really difficult to beat at home. When Iowa comes to play them next week, regardless of what happens in this Oregon game, excuse me, I think USC is going to be the favored team in this one. They are just so good at home, and they're really showing that. Even obviously against Nebraska, they showed even when Jayden Maiava is not having his best day, even when he doesn't look like the best quarterback in the nation, as he looked at times this season, he is still able to go out there, lead his team well, continue to move the ball down the field, and the defense is able to play really well and help him out. So great stuff there by Lincoln Riley, Jayden Maiava in a good game. Here they're going to continue to finish this one out, and don't be surprised if USC makes the playoffs at 9-3 this season. Now, in order for that to happen, I think Iowa needs to beat Oregon, and then USC would need to lose to Iowa and then beat Oregon. Maybe that would need, or Iowa, I apologize. Iowa would need to beat Oregon. USC would need to beat Iowa, and then Oregon would need to beat USC, and then you would obviously need some help like Texas and Oklahoma and those teams losing. So you have the opportunity here for USC to get to the playoffs, but I don't think it's very likely that they get in at 9-3. I think it's a possibility. I wouldn't say it's completely out of it, but I don't think they would. So Max is with me. He says he'd be very surprised if a Big Ten team gets in to the playoffs at 9-3. I would too. Like I said, I'm not expecting it to happen, but it could happen, right? You would get some help from, maybe a Big 12 team or two losing a game they shouldn't lose. Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, Texas might lose 2 games down the stretch. They played both Georgia and Texas A&M to end the year. Oklahoma's going to play Alabama here, and they could always slip up later on. I mean, it's an Oklahoma team that has a really good defense, but the offense still just isn't there. So, I'm just gonna say I don't think it's out of possibility that they make it in at 9-3. Not gonna predict it. I think they would definitely be in at 9-3 if they were given some of the respect that they deserve at the beginning of the season. I feel like, but they lose to Illinois and at the beginning of the season, and people just automatically think, Illinois, they're no good because Indiana crushed them. Which that's not Indiana's fault. Indiana, they ran the ball at the end of the game, and Illinois couldn't stop them, so not their fault. But that's just kind of how the game goes. So, all right, Max, I appreciate you being here, man. Not many other people here, and I get it. We had basketball tonight, and it's late. It is 12:30 here on the East Coast, and there's honestly not too much to talk about in this one. I guess we talk about from the Northwestern side. Caleb Komalafe continues to be a good option for this team. He was actually the leading receiver in this one, 5 receptions for 40 yards. Northwestern, like I said, running the ball, Komalafe had 17 for 118. They only had 130 rushing yards on the day. When you get outrushed by USC in the game, that's just not going to be a recipe for success. Preston Stone surprised me a little bit in this one, 20 of 30 for 150 yards and 1 touchdown. But, I mean, some of those throws, though, like they are just intentionally underthrowing the ball so that way the receivers are able to get back to it. And USC's cornerbacks really struggled with some of those throws. And it really looks like Preston Stone is telegraphing a lot of these throws. So I do have to give Zach Lujan credit. The offense looks better as the year's going on, but still, the lack of development of Preston Stone and the lack of passing game is still it's still concerning to me. So 4 receptions, 23 yards, 1 touchdown for Griffin Wilde. Good stuff there, but you need to have some more yards and targets there in your passing game. So Max says, appreciate your stream. Of course, appreciate that, Max. And Penn State guy says the Northwestern coach doing a good job, but to very respectable program. Back to very respectable program. Oh yeah, and I think that's the thing that going into this game that I was trying to tell people. Like, Northwestern's not a pushover. Like, USC gets this win. This isn't the Northwestern team that's like 1-8, and it's like, yeah, we are supposed to beat them. Yes, you are supposed to beat them as USC. You are more talented. You have more investment in the program. You have the better head coach. But this is still a Northwestern team that has a good defense, has a good running game, and they're going to test you. And like they did early on in this game, it was 14-14, and Northwestern almost went up with the lead to go 21-14. But really good play by Jayden Maiava, and you're able to respond with a 3-play, 80-yard drive with a couple big plays in that one to put you over the top. So I think Northwestern is a much more respectable program than people give them credit for. And Zach and I were right at the beginning of the season. We said that they're probably going to make a bowl. We gave up on them too early after that Tulane game. So respect to Northwestern. Really tough spot to go on the road against USC here. SoCal Buckeye says Northwestern's going to beat Michigan. Yeah, they play, what is that, next, because Michigan is off this week, I believe, and so the next week after that. I don't know if I'm going to pick Northwestern to beat Michigan, but I definitely think it's a game, especially after that Purdue game, I definitely think it's a game that Michigan has to be ready for. Now, it is at Wrigley Field, to my knowledge, so Michigan fans are going to go in there and kind of take it over, right? I mean, it's really close for Michigan, Wrigley Field. A lot of people are going to want to go to that one. It seems like every time Northwestern plays a big team at Wrigley Field, it's not really a home game for them. But, the Wrigley Field atmosphere and the way that the playing turf is set up, it is a little bit of a weird situation there that can give teams a little bit of fits. So, it's going to be an interesting one, but I would not be surprised at all if if that is a close game there with Northwestern and Michigan. If Michigan doesn't bring their A game, that's going to be a game that is in there in the fourth quarter, and all it takes is, 1 or 2 plays by Northwestern. So if Michigan comes in with their A game, they take care of business. They should win this game by a score or 2, if not more. But if Michigan is lacking, Bryce Underwood is missing throws, again, and the injuries are really taking a toll. I think that's one of the biggest things in this one. If you have more kind of injury issues and stuff, linebackers being out was huge last game. Derek Moore played well in that Purdue game. Jordan Marshall, obviously, he had his big runs and was consistent running the ball as well. But with only one running back and some offensive line injuries and stuff like that too, you do look at a possible gut check game, especially with what happened to Northwestern last year, right? I mean, Michigan blew them out last year. Does Northwestern want some revenge? Do they want to kind of go after them again? We'll see. It's going to be an interesting game. We'll see what happens. Max says he lives 3 blocks away from Wrigley. Hey, Max, go buy a ticket. Go see, go see the game. Northwestern and in Michigan. He says next week, I believe. Yes, they have Northwestern, and then they have somebody else. It's somebody they should beat. I'm pretty sure. Let me just check it really fast. And then they have Ohio State after that one. So, yeah, they have Northwestern at Maryland. Yeah, at Northwestern, at Maryland, and then Ohio State. That Maryland game could be interesting as well. It's going to be the battle of the 2 freshman QBs, and at Maryland does make it a little bit more interesting. I would say I don't think Michigan is going to come back and win, in a 20-point deficit in the fourth quarter like Washington did. So if Maryland jumped out to that kind of lead, I think that Maryland has a good situation to be able to win that game. But, it's really, really hard to jump out in that kind of lead against a Michigan defense. So we'll see. That's going to be an interesting one. The Northwestern one is going to be an interesting one. But in order to keep their playoff hopes alive, they're going to have to win both those games going up against the Buckeyes. We will see. Max says Mike Locksley's got to win another game or 2 this season. Otherwise, his seat is going to be hot. Yeah, I think his seat will be hot if he wins one more game, but I think he'll make it through. Bowl game would definitely save him. I think it's so interesting what, that report that came out about how he didn't want to pay guys like Roman Hemby and some of his older guys on the team. He wanted to really focus on recruits and everything. I suppose I get it, but you're coming off a season when you were 4-8 that season. I would think you'd want to, focus a little bit more on the older guys and bring in the younger guys, but also focus in a little bit more on the older guys to make sure you're bringing them back. So that way you don't have another 4-8 season, because if they go 4-8 this season, he's going to be fired. If they go 5-7, probably not, but you would think you'd want to bring back some of the older guys, go 6-6, 7-5 this year, give your fan base a little bit more hope. I don't know. I get wanting to bring the young talent in, but it just didn't seem like the year to do that for Mike Locksley. So I do think one thing we need to talk about is this Lincoln Riley stuff with Josh Pate, and I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comments section. So Josh Pate was on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, and I did a video about this over on the JR's Big Ten Football News and Rumors, because it was mostly a rumor, but basically there's been some reports and stuff circulating around out there that Lincoln Riley might not be so safe at USC. And the thought is that he hasn't gone to the playoffs. He hasn't been maybe the type of coach that they think he's going to be. And if he misses the playoffs again this season, which, as we just talked about, most likely is going to happen, but still a possibility they can make it. And, I wouldn't put out the possibility of that they're going to win out too. I don't think that's a totally unlikely possibility either. But if Lincoln Riley doesn't make the playoffs, there is a possibility that he might move on and go someplace else. I believe the rumor was started by a Florida writer on one of their message boards. I think it's the On3 message board, where he kind of talked about like, hey, watch out for Lincoln Riley. Like, don't let his name be something that, you just kind of dismiss or whatever for this job. And so, of course, he's talking about the Florida job. I don't think Florida's as good of a job as USC. I think USC, personally, to me, is a better job than Florida. I know some of the talent in California might not be exactly what it has been, in the past, but it's still a lot of talent out there. And even if the talent is moving more toward Arizona and Utah, like some people are speculating, it's still talent that is out there on the West Coast, and you're one of the biggest brands to be out there to acquire that talent. Yes, you are battling Oregon for a lot of that stuff. Yes, if UCLA gets their act together, they're going to be battling you for that kind of stuff too. But basically, all the programs out west that you were kind of battling before have kind of dissipated out there, right? Cal isn't really going to be battling with you. Stanford's not going to be battling with you. Sure, you have Oregon, Washington, UCLA to worry about, but I don't think the recruiting thing is as big of a thing as some people make it out to be. So of course, I'm not getting into the big story here, which is that Josh Pate on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast, where he was on with Taylor Llewellyn and Will Compton, basically said he wanted to start something, which, this isn't unlike Josh Pate right now. He was always somebody that was kind of like, had information but didn't want to start a whole bunch of stuff. And then ever since he's joined On3 and ESPN, he's gotten a little bit more loose with his information, I guess you could say, and definitely being on with Taylor Llewellyn, Will Compton has added to that as well, it feels like. But basically said he wanted to start something, and then he was like, here's what I'll say, and then he pulls the pin and on the grenade and like throws it up, and he says, keep your eye on Lincoln Riley, which was like, boom, big news to be on the lookout for. It's not just message board stuff anymore. So I think the big question is, why would Lincoln Riley want to leave USC? Because USC to me is one of the best jobs, top 10, top 5 jobs. I'd say fringe top 5 jobs in all of college football. I don't think he would leave for Florida, but a few reasons why he might, these are just the best few that I can come up with. So number one, the recruiting stuff. If you do believe that there's less talent out there in California and there is more competition with like Oregon, UCLA possibly, and Washington out there as well. Okay, I don't think Washington, UCLA are really threats to USC all that much, but you could see it a little bit here and there. Oregon, definitely a threat. Like they're going after a lot of the same guys. So I could see that a little bit, but I don't think it's enough for you to leave California, leave USC altogether and go to Florida. Like, why would you want to go to a program that is literally in need of a complete rebuild at this point? Yes, you would possibly have DJ Lagway there. And there is the thought process of like the defense and all you need to do is come in. But in this day and age of college football, your roster is not guaranteed for you. Florida might have all these guys on good contracts and be able to keep them, sure. But as we saw with Wisconsin, like they weren't able to hold on to Xavier Lucas. So, and they had a contract with him. So can you really hold on to all these guys? Maybe there's something there that we're just not aware of, and Florida's not going to lose any of their guys to the transfer portal. If that happens, okay, maybe there is something there. The other part of it is the travel stuff. Lincoln Riley is obviously not a huge fan of the amount of travel that USC is going through right now. He wasn't a fan of this Northwestern game because they were going to have to play late on Saturday and then play an early game on Friday. So he was not a fan of that as well. But I mean, this is college football now, right? You can go to the SEC and travel less, I guess, but it's still going to be really good competition in the SEC. And just like how you're going to have a coaching, a grinded out kind of coaching matchup in the Big Ten, you're going to have a lot of talent matchups down there as well. I don't discount the fact that the SEC has a lot of talent down there. I just don't think they have the coaches to utilize the talent like the Big Ten does. I think the Big Ten has generally less talent than the SEC, but I don't think the SEC develops their talent quite as well as the Big Ten, especially for college football, in my opinion. So there's definitely the travel aspect to that, but I think that USC's administration is showing that they're backing Lincoln Riley, and I also think that the Big Ten is recognizing that the current structure of the Big Ten is not necessarily something they want to go with forever. I don't think this is something that they're showing that like we can keep doing this forever. I think that eventually you're going to get pods, you're going to get divisions at some point. Maybe that's adding a couple more teams, whatever that might be. But I don't think 10 years from now, the Big Ten's going to look exactly the same and we're all going to be playing the exact same schedule with this kind of stuff. I think that the way things are right now, it's temporary. And I also think that USC's administration is showing their backing of Lincoln Riley and his concern for travel by having some of these conversations about Notre Dame, which, if you don't know what's going on with that, essentially Notre Dame does not want to, or USC does not want to end the rivalry with Notre Dame, but they don't want to continue to play Notre Dame in like week 7, 8, 9. They want to play Notre Dame in the first few weeks of the season. They want that to be their main out of conference game, and they want to have it in the first 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, of the season, which to me makes sense. But of course, Notre Dame doesn't want to do that because they've always relied on USC to be a team that they don't have to schedule to play in those kind of windows. But with that kind of thing that USC needs, it puts Notre Dame in a bad spot. So I do think when people say like, "Oh, it's all USC's fault and they don't want to play the game," I do think they're not seeing the entire thing. I do think USC needs to play the game, especially with the SEC going to 9 conference games now. But I don't think it's exactly preposterous that they would not want to play that game at that time. So that's kind of the sum of why Lincoln Riley might want to leave USC. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think he wants to leave USC. And the other possibility that I didn't bring up too is if USC wants Lincoln Riley to leave, this could be a way to get him to be gone, right? They could structure something out with a Florida or an LSU to have his buyout be decreased if they would want to move on from him. I don't think they'd want to. I don't know if you're going to find all that many great coaching candidates out there right now, especially when you're battling teams like Penn State and LSU and Florida. I think you'd rather just hang on to your coach, especially if he ends this season going 8-4 at the worst, right? So I think you're definitely going to see USC want to try to hold on to Lincoln Riley, and unless LSU or Florida just comes in with some kind of like mega offer, I don't see Lincoln Riley leaving USC. It could have happened, sure. Is it likely to happen? No. And I think that Josh Pate is really, really good at not saying a lot, but still saying something. And if that's how he wants to run things, sure. It's entertaining. People love his podcast, and he does a good job. He's a very eloquent speaker and does a great job. But I just don't know if there was actually a whole lot said there other than, if Lincoln Riley goes 8-4 this season, don't be surprised if he moves on. Probably not going to go 8-4 this season. If he does, maybe he leaves, maybe moves on, but I don't think it would be for LSU or Florida. Honestly, I think if he does move on, I think Texas Tech probably comes open. He goes back there, right? Which is not exactly the craziest thing in the world. Joey McGuire, if he doesn't make the playoffs this season, Texas Tech would not be super ecstatic with him because they put a lot of money into this roster to be able to make the playoffs. And especially when you're putting this kind of money into a roster in the Big 12 where the other rosters are not as talented, you definitely want to see him get to the playoffs and have some success there. But at the very least, get to the playoffs. Maybe you don't have success in your first season, but Arkansas is looking for a coach, and Joey McGuire grew up an Arkansas fan. So, maybe he goes for that job. Who knows? A lot to work out, but I would say as long as Lincoln Riley doesn't go 8-4, he's good. I don't think anybody is poaching him away. I don't think USC wants to lose him. Essentially, if USC loses Lincoln Riley, I think that's more USC's choice than it is Lincoln Riley's choice. That's my opinion. So let's see what you guys are saying. Max is saying, where could possibly be better for Riley? He has all the resources he needs and is doing decent. Would Florida, LSU, or Penn State want him? Sounds like Florida does want him, like after Lane Kiffin. Like Lane Kiffin is the guy that Florida wants the most. But if they don't get him, that sounds like Lincoln Riley might be their next guy to go after. LSU, boy, I just don't think that would be a good decision. Not necessarily because of Lincoln Riley. I just think you want to get somebody from down there after Brian Kelly and the debacle that he was. But, they went out and paid Brian Kelly a buttload of money. So who knows? Maybe they go pay a buttload of money to Lincoln Riley too. And there's always the possibility of like another big job opening up, right? Like if LSU poaches a coach from, I don't know, name your big job here or there. then maybe Lincoln Riley moves someplace else. But I just think that's so far down the line that I don't think you can even really mention Lincoln Riley's name right now. So um, Max says can't break through the playoff ceiling of the Big Ten, needs to downgrade and leave for an easier SEC to get to the playoffs. Hey, I like the way you think there, Max. Yeah, go to the SEC where it's way easier to get to the playoffs there, right? You got all the bias and everything for you. So, and then about the schedule, he says I like the current schedule. You play each team every other year outside of rivals. Yeah, no, I like the way the schedule's set up now too. I do think divisions could be interesting, but it would be really hard, right? Because you can't put Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State, and like I don't know what other powerhouse team would you have out there. You couldn't put all three of those teams in the same division, but Ohio State and Michigan definitely have to be in the same division, which means you essentially need to put two powerhouse teams in every division. Otherwise, you're not gonna have a very fair process for Ohio State and Michigan being in the same division, unless they put them in different divisions. You put Ohio State, Penn State, Maryland, and Rutgers in a division, and then Michigan State, Purdue, and Indiana. But then you have Michigan and Indiana together. Indiana looks like a powerhouse right now. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one. Steven, appreciate you being here. He says it was a good game. Hey, JR. Hey, Steven, appreciate you being here. It was a good game. Good win for USC. There isn't a good selection on coaches right now. Yeah, and that's another reason why I don't think that USC would want to move on from Lincoln Riley, right? Like if there's a big up and coming coach out there that maybe they could go after, sure, maybe, but it doesn't look like there's that kind of guy unless Bowen just has this guy in mind that we don't even know about or we're not clocking on our radar or something like that. I can't imagine who that would be. So, Kenneth says USC has the number one recruiting class coming in. Oh yeah, and that's another thing too. Like, why would you leave the number one recruiting class? You have obviously the financial investment. You just got the new facilities that you wanted as well. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me on why Lincoln Riley would leave. That's why I say that if Lincoln Riley leaves, it's not Lincoln Riley's decision. It to me, it has to be USC's decision. Be like, yeah, move on, get him out of here. We want somebody that can make it to the playoffs. But who's that guy right now, right? Maybe next season if there's less, coaching carousel out there. I mean, I think that's like one of the reasons why Wisconsin doesn't want to move on from Luke Fickell is because it's a huge buyout, and I don't think they're convinced that they're going to get anybody better than Luke Fickell. I know Luke Fickell's been a disaster at Wisconsin, but you look around out there, who are you going to go get that fits Wisconsin's culture and everything? Sean Lewis, maybe. I mean, it's one good season at San Diego State, but it's not been like amazing. Like, yeah, they're doing well. It's not like they're doing amazing. What's the guy at New Mexico? Jason, forgetting his name, but the Jason guy out at New Mexico. Like, yeah, he's doing pretty well out there. He's definitely doing better than New Mexico has been with a whole lot of transfers. But to me, I don't think Lincoln Riley leaves USC. If it happens, I think it's a USC decision and not a Lincoln Riley decision. So, all right. I think that's all we got. So, yeah. Max says way too many open spots, way too few proven coaches. That is my thought exactly. And why would you go from a huge buyout with him to a huge buyout with somebody else? Yeah, I think USC is in a really good position right now. I do think that Lincoln Riley needs to possibly look into giving up the play calling. I think what Ryan Day and Eli Drinkowitz have done has been really, really good for their programs. And I think Lincoln Riley could benefit from going to that at some point. But even if he doesn't, they're still gonna be a team that can make the playoffs. They're still gonna be a team that can get up there. I just don't know if they're going to be able to win the Big Ten with Lincoln Riley still calling plays. That's always been my biggest critique. So we'll see. But hey, look at Max here. Appreciate you, Max. Says make sure you hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed to the show. Yes, please do that. If you're listening on podcast, 5-star rating and review, do that as well. We definitely appreciate that. But this is going to be a really fun November of Big Ten football. So you're going to want to hit that like button. We have previews, recaps, all that good stuff. We'll do a recap Sunday night. We'll do our power rankings tomorrow night after everything's over. It's going to be a good time and looking forward to it. So James says if USC wins out and Oregon only loses to them, do they both get in. That's interesting. I don't think I don't think Oregon gets in if they lose another game. Well, I shouldn't say that. Because you could get Washington and Iowa. Yeah. Yeah. With Iowa being ranked 20th and Washington most likely moving up to 20th, if USC wins out at this point, they're in. If Oregon loses to USC, but they beat Iowa and Washington, then they're in too, because Iowa and Washington, I think, are good enough wins to catapult you up there. The strangest thing with the playoff stuff right now is that I'm leaning back right now and I have some of my self cut off. The biggest thing with the playoffs right now is that they hardly even talked about resumes when they were talking about what teams deserve to be where. They were talking a lot on like, well, we think this about this team and this about this team. Like one of their big reasons with Ohio State and Indiana was they were like, well, we think Ohio State's offensive line is better and they have the better defense. So that's why we had Ohio State above them. I call bull crap on this committee. This committee is not out here watching film on every single team. Okay. Like they're watching maybe one or two Ohio State games, but they're not out here getting the all 22 and watching every single team out there. These are athletic directors. These dudes do not have enough time. Hey, we need a decision on the uniforms of this, Mr. Athletic Director. Hold on, I don't have to wait till next week. I gotta grind this Ohio State film. Like, that's not happening. What is going on is they are basically just doing whatever the AP poll says. They're adjusting a few head-to-heads here and there. They put Texas over Oklahoma. They put Miami down just like they had Notre Dame. They put Miami down and Notre Dame up just like the AP poll had. They moved Oregon down a little bit because they said, well, Oregon doesn't have big wins. So they're adjusting a few things here and there. They put Missouri down and they put Iowa up. But at the end of the day, they're just doing what the AP poll is. And so whatever the AP poll comes out with next week, they're probably going to do a similar thing to that. And the AP poll is going to adjust with what the college football playoff rankings did. So they're kind of just copying off each other, for being honest, which is really interesting to me. So I would think if things go the way they should, Oklahoma loses to Alabama, they wouldn't have any more quality wins on that schedule that I'm aware of. Texas is most likely going to lose to both Georgia and Texas A&M. Even if they get one of those wins, they're probably in, but you could definitely have somebody skip over Notre Dame. So, I think if Oregon loses to USC and USC wins out, I think they're both in. They should be both in. But it would be hard for USC to jump over Notre Dame. But the wins over Iowa and Oregon should get USC over whoever the Big 12 team is, right? Because the Big 12 team that loses BYU and Texas Tech, they're going to lose, and they're not going to have a super quality win on that schedule other than Utah. So, and then they'll have the Big 12 championship game, sure. So I would say as long as the parity happens in the middle, like we think it's going to, or not the parity, as long as the games with the big-time SEC teams beat the middle-tier SEC teams, the Big 12 champ that wins between BYU and Texas Tech actually wins the Big 12 like they should, I think we're fine. If not, and this is college football, so it could not happen, then I think that USC and Oregon would be in trouble of both of them making the playoffs. Probably one of them do, but maybe not both of them. It's going to be interesting. So, Frunk says if SC beats Iowa, very tough out. The winner of USC and Oregon game will get in as the third Big Ten team. Yeah, it just kind of depends on what happens at Oregon Iowa game, right? Because if Iowa beats Oregon, then Iowa's going to have a little bit more cachet, but Oregon's not going to have as much. USC wins out. Oregon gets that third loss. Oregon's not in. Iowa's not getting in either. So you have to have Oregon beat Iowa. You have to have USC beat Iowa. That would knock them out of the top 25 for sure. And then If they beat USC, that's just the biggest question is how much does USC move up or how much does Oregon move up? If Oregon beats Iowa, they should move up against Ole Miss, 100%. There's no reason why Oregon should be below Ole Miss if they beat Iowa. On the road, Kinnick, we saw Iowa gave Indiana a really good game, and honestly, Iowa may have beaten Indiana if Mark Gronowski didn't get hurt in that game. I don't want to say for sure because we just don't know, but they could have. They could have beat Indiana in that game. So Indiana or Iowa is a good team that people need to be aware of. Are they going to go to the playoffs? Probably not. They got a really tough end of their schedule, but it could happen, and they need to be treated as such. So, yeah, it's so much in question now. With Oregon being ranked 9th, there's so much in question now. So we'll see. Look at me. I said this wasn't going to be a long podcast, and now we're 35 minutes in because you guys are great and you're in the comment section. And we appreciate it. So Frank says, too bad SEC had food poisoning in the 2-point loss to Illinois. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. The thing that I think is too bad, sure, the food poisoning. The thing I think is too bad is that USC loses a game on the road and they get crucified for it. You lost a game on the road. SEC teams lose games on the road and they drop 1 or 2 spots in the polls. They don't get crucified for it. But because the Big Ten doesn't get credit and because the bowl rankings or the college football playoff rankings just copies what the AP poll does, that they don't actually go off of like how good they think a team is for the entire year. They use the AP poll rankings. And so then they put USC in there and it's like, well, USC had 2 good losses to Illinois and Notre Dame. Notre Dame loses to Miami, and they get put right above them real quick after Miami loses a couple games. You know? Sure, USC got put above Illinois too, but Illinois' losses were also to more ranked teams. Like, those were good teams that they played on the road. Indiana, Washington, on the road. Yeah, you lost to Ohio State. You also gave Ohio State a really good fight in that game. Illinois won the success rate battle in that game against Ohio State. Does that mean they won the game? No, of course not. But it means they gave them a really good fight. Scored the most points as anybody scored on Ohio State this season. I think that says something about your team. But, of course, they don't see it that way. And the Big Ten has to live with Oregon being ranked 9th, which is so stupid, behind Big 12 teams. Sure, BYU over them, sure. Texas Tech should not be over Oregon. Ole Miss should not be over Oregon. Either of those two. Heck, I'd put Oregon over Georgia. But, you know, I don't make the rules. It is what it is. So, all right, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Well, let's look at the playoff odds really fast because those might help, and then we'll get out of here. The team in the Big Ten with the best playoff odds: Michigan is at plus 680 on FanDuel. USC is plus 490. Washington is plus 760. Iowa is plus 920. So Iowa has the hardest schedule to end the season. Excuse me, of those 4. USC is next, but they have the best odds to make the playoffs, which kind of leads me to the belief that even at 9-3, they could possibly get in. Albeit unlikely, but they could possibly get in. Michigan at plus 680. I mean, they just have 1 game left, right? You're supposed to take care of business against Northwestern and Maryland at their place. Again, you're supposed to. We'll see what happens. But you just have 1 game left there. And then Washington, plus 760. Washington really just has a game against Oregon left. They're honestly in about as good of a position as Michigan is. You look at that Washington schedule to end the season, and to me it's easier, but with about the same amount of reward as Michigan, because Michigan beats Northwestern on the road, and nobody's going to say anything. Oh, yeah, you should have beat Northwestern. No, Northwestern's kind of a good team. Are they a great team? No. Do they have a really hard schedule this year, and they're playing pretty well? Yeah. They have a hard schedule this year, and they're going to probably make a bowl game. We'll see. Maybe not, but they're going to probably make a bowl game. But Washington has at Wisconsin, Purdue, and at UCLA to end the season, and then Oregon. So if Oregon beats USC and Iowa, and then Washington beats them at the end of the season, they could possibly make it in. I don't think Oregon would get in that scenario. Maybe they do. But I think Washington could possibly get in if they move up above some teams. Just kind of depends on how much they have a move up for beating at Wisconsin, Purdue, and at UCLA. So, very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. So Steven says, yeah, Washington over Oregon. Steven says Oregon sucks at Washington. Well, yeah, they lost. What was it? Because last year they played at Oregon. In 2023, Oregon lost at Washington, and then they lost in the championship game against Washington, right? Yeah, the Pac-12 championship game. They lost. Oregon lost to Washington. So Washington won both those games. Close games, too. I believe it was like a field goal in both of those games. And then 2021, I'm just proving you're right in here now, Steven. Oh, no, Oregon won in Washington in 2021, 26-16. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't have the whole record in front of me. Sorry, Steven. But, by 9 points. Yeah, 3 times. Okay. We'll see what happens. I definitely think some people are going to overlook Washington a little bit at the end of the year for Oregon. They're going to talk more about the USC and Iowa games, and I get that. Those are the more highly ranked teams right now. But yeah, I think it is going to be fantastic into the season. Oregon, all eyes on them. All eyes on Iowa, USC, and then at the end of the season, we'll get some eyes on now James and Steven are going to go at it in the chat. All right, we'll end it here before James and Steven go at it too much. All right, thanks everybody for watching and listening to the Big Ten Huddle. We'll be back for power rankings after the final Big Ten game on Saturday night. Appreciate you being here. Have a good one.